If you take a drive down the A4 through the rolling hills of Wiltshire, just outside the picture postcard village of Box, you'll pass stone cottages, country pubs, and rolling sheep pastures. But if you take a narrow turning off the main road, the idyllic English countryside abruptly gives way to 10-foot razor wire, thermal imaging cameras, and heavy steel security gates. Behind those gates stands RAF Rudloe Manor, a 19th-century manor house that officially didn't have an airstrip, didn't house combat squadrons, and according to the Ministry of Defence, was little more than a routine administrative outpost. Yet, for nearly 40 years, British newspapers and intelligence researchers called this place Britain's Area 51. Locals in the surrounding villages whispered about unmarked helicopters flying dead-of-night sorties with zero navigation lights. Walkers reported massive concrete ventilation towers humming in the middle of dense woodlands. And whenever commercial pilots or police officers spotted anomalous high-speed objects over British airspace, Whitehall quietly routed every single file to this exact manor. For decades, the official stance was total silence. But when the declassification deadline finally hit, the truth of what was hidden underneath Wiltshire wasn't just a military secret, it was the blueprint for what would happen to the United Kingdom on the day the world ended. To understand why Rudloe Manor became the epicenter of British conspiracy culture, you have to look at the geology beneath it. Wiltshire sits on massive deposits of bathstone. For over a century, miners carved out a labyrinth of subterranean caverns under Corsham and Box. Hundreds of miles of dry, structurally solid stone corridors over 100 feet below ground. During the 1970s and 80s, strange anomalies began stacking up around the perimeter. Civilian contractors working near the railway lines reported massive freight elevators descending deep into the cliffside, carrying heavily guarded cargo containers. Hikers crossing public footpaths near Box Hill frequently found themselves confronted by armed Ministry of Defence police, appearing out of unmarked tree lines, ordering them to turn back. Then came the reports of the Flying Triangle Wave. Witnesses across southern England claimed sightings of silent black wedge-shaped craft accelerating at impossible angles. When investigators tried to submit freedom of information queries, they hit a bureaucratic brick wall. Every trail led back to RAF Rudloe Manor. In the late 1990s, aviation researcher Nick Redfern and a handful of investigative journalists managed to pry open the first batch of official files from the National Archives. What they uncovered proved the researchers weren't imagining things. Rudloe Manor was the headquarters of the RAF Provost and Security Services, RAF P&SS. Underneath this police unit sat a specialized division known as Flying Complaints Flight. Whenever an unidentified radar contact or visual sighting was forwarded to the Ministry of Defence's public-facing desk in London, the real investigative work didn't happen in Whitehall. The files were duplicated and immediately sent to RAF Rudloe Manor. Why would the military's elite security division care about lights in the sky? The public believed the MOD was reverse engineering foreign craft in the underground quarries. The reality, however, was far more pragmatic and deeply paranoid. The RAF wasn't protecting extraterrestrial technology, they were protecting the physical continuity of the British state. Directly beneath Rudloe Manor lay Burlington, alternately codenamed Subterfuge, Stockwell, Turnstile, and Site 3. Spanning over 35 acres and carved 100 feet deep into the limestone, Burlington was a fully autonomous subterranean city, built during the Cold War, to guarantee that the British government could survive a direct thermonuclear strike on London. This wasn't just a couple of reinforced rooms. Burlington was designed to house up to 4,000 key personnel, including the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, senior military commanders and civil servants, for 3 months without surfacing. It contained over 60 miles of underground roads navigated by battery-powered transport vehicles, a subterranean BBC studio capable of broadcasting emergency addresses to the surviving population, the largest telephone exchange in the world outside of London, and a private underground railway siding running directly off the main Brunel Box tunnel, allowing the Prime Minister's train to pull directly inside the bunker, under complete cover. The entire UFO reporting pipeline was an intelligence smokescreen. If an unidentified object entered British airspace, RAF and SS had to immediately verify whether it was Soviet electronic espionage, an airborne probe mapping radar dead zones, or a precursor to a nuclear strike directed right at Corsham. The secrecy wasn't about aliens. It was about keeping the coordinates of the bunker off Soviet target maps. In late 2004, the Ministry of Defence officially decommissioned Burlington. The emergency rations were cleared out, the generators were switched off, and the public was finally allowed to see photographs of the abandoned 1950s desks and decaying blast doors. Case closed, right? Not quite. When researchers subsequently submitted Freedom of Information requests for the operational flight logs and investigative casebooks handled by RAF Rudloe Manor during the peak Cold War years, several key files were returned with massive redactions, or listed as having been accidentally destroyed during routine archiving. Furthermore, while Burlington itself was decommissioned, vast subterranean sections of the adjoining Corsham quarry complex remain active MOD restricted zones to this day. The nuclear bunker may belong to history, but the high security perimeter and CCTV networks never left. Which leaves the real question. If the Cold War ended 30 years ago, and the city underneath Wiltshire has been abandoned, what are they still guarding?